Hey loungers, welcome back to this fine Tuesday. If you're new here, my name is Mason T and I am a 20 plus year importer and product developer. So we're going to be continuing our coverage all about tariffs, right? And I feel as if the best way to start off right now is to just go into tariff 101. So I'm going to show you guys this short video real quick, and it just roughly explains what tariffs is. And then I'm going to go into more of the history, into specifically all about China and stuff.
It's important to remember that tariffs aren't just tools for trade wars. They're a key part of economic independence. Before income tax was introduced in 1913, tariffs were the main source of revenue for the U.S. government. This allowed the country to fund itself and grow without directly taxing citizens. Tariffs protect American workers and industries from being undercut by low-cost, lower-quality foreign goods, allowing American businesses to compete and thrive. By levying tariffs, we maintain jobs and encourage domestic production, both crucial for national security and prosperity. Tariffs also help the U.S. negotiate better trade deals, pushing other countries to lower their trade barriers in exchange. So, who would oppose tariffs? Globalists, corrupt politicians, and crooked elites whose only care is wealth and power. They take advantage of cheap labor and lax regulations abroad. They take advantage of you. Enough is enough. Tariffs are about valuing our workers, our consumers, and our nation. Let's keep jobs in America and use tariffs the way our forefathers did, to protect our economy and our future. We need strong economic policies. We need tariffs, not taxes. We need to put America first and begin a new golden age.
Okay, now that you've seen the propaganda, let's start the show. In order to understand how China became what it is today, I kind of sort of have to give you guys a little background story and history lesson. So there are two parties after World War II in China. It was the Kuomintang and the Chinese Communist Party. And the Chinese Communist Party was led by Mao Zedong, and the Kuomintang was led by Chiang Kai-shek, okay? And I am actually the descendant of a three-star general in the Kuomintang party. My great-grandfather was a general. And coincidentally, my wife is actually the granddaughter of another general also in the Kuomintang party. So what ended up happening is that there was a lot of corruption in the Kuomintang party at the time, and they were the party that was in control. Eventually, they started to lose a lot of support, and they ultimately lost to Mao Zedong, and they were forced to go over to Taiwan. All right. And then when they were in Taiwan, they called themselves the ROC, Republic of China, continuing to lay a stake in a claim, okay, that they are the rightful government of all of China and they will reclaim it one day. They're just currently using Taiwan as a base for now. While the Communist Party fully took over China and became the People's Republic of China, also saying that they are the legitimate government. And that's why you have that whole Taiwan China thing like going on today. That hasn't ended yet. Now, at the time, I think Chiang Kai-shek needed support in order to try to reclaim China because he always had goals of reclaiming China again and getting it back into power. So I think it was through Churchill, and then they met with, the United States president at the time. And what ended up happening is that the United States was very invested in the idea of not allowing communism to spread any further. So that explains the whole Vietnam War and all that stuff, to not have that whole domino effect of more and more communism. But actually, China, communist China is here today. And I believe Vietnam is also a communist country. Anyways, the point is that United States at the time invested a lot into Taiwan in the 60s. And then in the 70s, Taiwan flourished and they began to have a technological boom, right? So the earliest companies in Taiwan that you probably heard of is things like Asus and Acer and the Taiwan Semiconductor Company. So the thing is that at the time, okay, somewhere around the 70s into the mid 90s, right? The whole motto, the whole slogan was, it's very well made in Taiwan. A lot of the stuff that was produced out of Taiwan was very high quality, especially the electronics, to the point where many things in Taiwan was made even better than the stuff in Japan, right? And because Taiwan is very close to Japan, we copy a lot of these same kind of cultures and traditions. We also do the bowing stuff and all that other stuff as well. I am personally Taiwanese as well. So, anyways, the point is that China began to poach a lot of the factory owners in Taiwan. My wife's dad, my father-in-law, happens to be one of these factory owners. He personally does kitchen goods and thermoses and all sorts of cookware stuff. Anyways, so what ended up happening is that they promised them 15 years no tax, you have government support, and you have very, very cheap China labor. So one of the biggest problems of being a factory owner, developer, all that stuff, right, is that the land in Taiwan is very limited. It's a small island compared to the size of China. So they all went over there to start to, develop factories and stuff. I remember my wife telling me an anecdotal story of when she was like, in her early 20s, and the dad, my father-in-law took them all on a family vacation, right? Actually, it was just a ruse to go see the land that the government was going to, let him build his factory on. And my wife is all like, what are we doing out here? There's nothing out here. And then he's all like, can you see it? Can you see it? It's beautiful. It's wonderful out here. And my wife's all like, I'm going back into the car. Anyways, so the issue is that you get 15 years no tax, and it was a huge incentive to do that. Now, have you ever thought to yourself, how do they bring the prices so low? It's not just that the currency there is a lot lower than the American currency. It's also that, and it's not even just the fact that the pay over there and the standard of living is, the cost of living is a lot lower. It's the fact that there's so many people there who are also willing to work, that if you have a facility that supports 1,000 workers at a time, they would just go ahead and hire 3,000 workers and then have them do 3 shifts of 8 hours each. So that way the factory is always working. It's just always going on and on. And that kind of efficiency of nonstop work is what brings a lot of products down to the point where you could buy a pair of you could produce a pair of Jordans for $4. So that's exactly how the shift happened from Taiwan over to China. Okay. So originally all of the factory owners, they were poached over there with huge incentives in order to start their factories over there. Okay. So when you think of, all the companies that they were already dealing with a lot of overseas American clients, then they move over to China, and now they could handle even larger orders and stuff like that. Then, in the world of commerce, everybody's happy, right? So now we're going to get into the story of today and the tariffs. And there's this lady's story. We're going to get into a whole bunch of stories, right, that I really want to share with you guys. So let's just jump into hers real quick. And everything that she has to say is so rooted in the real world stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that she's going to show you that will really, it's super eye-opening. Let's just let her talk right now.
So to answer everyone's question, why don't you just make them in America now? Move your manufacturing here. If bringing manufacturing back to the US is the goal, why are companies like Apple and Microsoft, who are most likely able to bring manufacturing back to the US, off the hook? I get that if we don't.
This was a little bit back and forth, right? Because we got a quick update that cell phones and stuff like that, they were off the hook. And then later on, Trump came out and said no, they're not necessarily off the hook. So that's a little back and forth on that one. But the point is that pretty much nobody can bring the manufacturing back to America right away. And I'll get into more why.
Let them continue to manufacture in China and exempt them from the tariffs that our cell phones and computers, which we all use, are going to get ridiculously expensive. I get it. But the latest manufacturing that was done in the US that we were good at was tech manufacturing. And those companies moved their manufacturing to China. They have the biggest pocketbooks. They have the most likely ability to bring that manufacturing back to the US. I'm a small business. I invented a placemat. This is my prototype. I cut and glued this together. I made a product that stops babies from dropping and throwing their toys. It's a placemat. This is the real one. Suction cups on the bottom. Comes with little toy straps that allow you to attach toys so babies can't drop them and throw them on the ground. When my son was born, I had no idea how to turn it into a real thing. I was just a mom. I had a corporate job. I made one for a friend and she forgot it one night and she's like, oh my God, it was the worst not having it. I didn't realize how useful it was until I didn't have it. You need to make that for real.
Okay, I just want to show you guys real quick, right, exactly what her business actually is. This is called Busy Baby, right? And it was that silicone mat. And then basically, you have your child on the seat over here. And this thing has suction cups at the bottom that you could just, suck it directly onto this. And then whatever you got to do, the toys and stuff, it would have, the lanyards. It would be tethered to the mat so that it's not falling all over the floor and stuff. Now, you can see over here that we're raising money to cover unexpected tariffs, and she's got a GoFundMe going on over here, right? And you can see that this is a lot of the goods that she has. And, I want to show you that this is what kind of sort of what her warehouse looks like, okay? I think she explained that, the cash flow that she needs is about $150,000 a month in order to, pay the employees and keep the lights on and all that good stuff. So, I think she's very humble by saying that she is a small business owner. She's medium.
And I thought, wow, how would I do that? So I found a product developer who had the expertise to help me design the product for manufacturing. And that American product developer also had a team in China to help me start manufacturing. The reason I could not start my manufacturing in the US is because I am a small business. I cannot afford to make 20,000 units. The reason US manufacturers require such high production runs is because they have to import the raw material. The raw material does not exist in the US.
Right.
And so they have to import that material in volumes that are big enough to bring down the costs. They also need the company they are manufacturing for to produce large amounts, because every time you switch out the machinery in a production line, you're not making money. It's downtime. So the factories in the US that have very high labor fees, that have very high expenses, they need to make product continually to be able to pay their bills. Totally understand that. So to start my business, we started in China, where they were willing to do very small production runs for us. Because when I invented this and I invested my own money into starting this company, I didn't know if people were actually going to buy it. I didn't know if it was
That's crazy.
I thought it was a good idea, but I didn't know if other parents would want to buy it. Okay, turns out
Right.
they have. Cool. So now fast forward 8 years.
Unfortunately, that is an item where you have no choice because it's so custom with the shape and whatever. You pretty much, your minimum order quantity is going to be at least like, probably 2,000 to 5,000 pieces or whatever. So you better do something, have a following, something.
And I have products sitting in China ready to come. In my warehouse outside, I have about 2 to 3 months of inventory. When that is gone, I have no more inventory to sell.
Right.
So then I have to figure out, how am I going to pay my employees?
See, there you go, right? Lease, payroll, loans, insurance, about $150K a month.
Pay my insurance, pay my lease when I don't have any revenue coming in.
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 months more product that's ready to ship to the US. However, it's going to cost me, what are we up to now? Let's see, we're up to $229,000 I have to come up with in 30 days just to get it across the border. On top of the cost I've already paid for that product. I own the product. But just to get it across the border, that cost, I have to increase my prices. I have to more than double my prices.
See, that's the problem right now for a lot of businesses that are caught right in this tariff window right now. You don't even know what to do anymore. You do bring it in, you don't bring it in.
I'm selling products to people with babies. They're trying to keep up with so many new expenses in their life, diapers, some getting formula, baby clothes, all the things you have to buy and carry around with you for a baby. While my products are great for baby's development and they make life so much easier as a parent, you don't need them to raise a baby. People are not going to pay double the price for my products. So I can't import them right now, but I also can't run out of money.
Good self-awareness.
If I found a factory today that was willing to do this, that had the right equipment, that had the right raw material, who had time, because these factories are already booked. The factories in the US are working hard. They're not just sitting around waiting for new companies to come in.
Right.
But let's just pretend that one is like, hey, Beth, come on, we'll do it for you right now. All right, cool. Let's do it. First, we need to make molds. A mold, and I'm going to try and put that in this video.
Here we go.
A steel plate that has cut out the shape of your product. And for my product, they take chunks of silicone, set it on the mold, which is heated, and then they compress it. It's compression molding, and it's heated and it melts the silicone and smush.
Okay, so I need to pause right here because I got to talk to you guys about tooling. Okay, I said that I would talk about this in Sunday's video. So the issue is that you could see that this is half of the mold, right? The half of the mold up top, half of the mold at the bottom. He's put 2 slabs of silicone on it, and then this one is going to be a heat press method. All right. So as far as the mold is concerned, somebody has to create that and apply it to the machine and make sure that the whole production assembly line thing makes sense so that we could keep making, more and more trays and mats and stuff like that over and over again. That's what tooling is. It's more complicated than what it actually sounds like. It's not so simple as, some engineer, he does the CAD drawing and then we go into the CNC and then, we cut out a piece of aluminum and then ta-da, it's done, right? It's not fabrication. That's what that is called. Tooling is a huge umbrella term where you have to know how to set this whole thing up. Now you also got to understand that this is just one station, right? This is probably, anywhere between 10, 20, or 30 stations that look like this that are constantly, producing your stuff. So that's the only way we could produce 100,000 pieces over a lead time of, say, 30 to 40 days, right? So there's many different ways. There is injection molds, open pour, all sorts of things. So when you think about stuff like car floor mats, because I'm in the automotive sector, so that's the best example off the top of my head. Also, when you think of banana clips, combs, stuff like that, they go into these kind of molds and they put a piece of acetate inside of it. Not plastic. Acetate is a little bit different. And your combs, pretty much all of the little items that you find at Ulta Beauty, right? Those are all like acetate based items. And this is what's very, very important. We don't do that here in the United States anymore. Okay. Back when all the companies were sending their engineers over to China to train them in order to do this, now China has the technology and the ability. When everything got moved overseas, these jobs are not here in the United States anymore. So what happens to the expats that went overseas? There's no reason for them to come back. At least over there would be head of operations training people and just making sure everything goes smoothly. And they're paid very handsomely to do that, because if you're taking an overseas position, you get paid very, very well. So, they have all the reason to stay over there and no reason to come back at all. Now we don't have the infrastructure of the people either. So the question isn't like just so simple. Should we bring, manufacturing back into the United States? Absolutely. That would be great. But can we instantly? No, that's the problem. And if you're thinking about, what that reporter said, Kim Iverson and stuff, I don't like what she said about, the whole vocational schools or whatever, because it's too slow. It is absolutely 100% night and day if corporations get behind this, because they want to get stuff done immediately. They're going to be far more efficient. When you think about how they sent their team of like 30 engineers and stuff like that over to China to get stuff done, how long do you think it took them to set up? It's going to be anywhere between like 6 months to a year, because time is money, right? They're not going to mess around. So if we could get that same kind of momentum and incentive to come back here to do that, then it's possible. But even if that was possible, we would still go through, at least like 2 years of pain first before everything is back into the United States. That's exactly what the problem is when it comes like to this whole tariff war. So, I think the intentions are in the right place. It's just the calculations of how to smoothly transition this is not there. So we're going to be experiencing a ton of hiccups.
Is it into the shape of a mat? Okay. Every
If
piece of my
you
product line has
and
a
then you
different
make that.
mold. The mini mat has a mold. The big mat has a mold. The bottle bungee has a mold. The tethers have a mold. I would need 8 new molds made. So you take American steel, which is not cheap. It gets sent to China.
Right. Even though each mold costs anywhere between $20,000 to $80,000, usually what happens is that you have to buy like 100,000 pieces, 200,000 pieces, and then that kind of sort of like evenly gets baked into the cost so that you don't feel it. You see what I'm saying? Most companies are like that. When I had to create some of my, items and stuff, like I had to order 1,000 pieces at a time, then I don't feel it when I order 1,000 pieces at a time. But if I just had to make one, then they would charge me for the one plus the tooling fee, and that would equal, at least about 1,000 units anyway. So you might as well have 1,000 units made.
To be tooled, to be turned into a mold to fit the shape, because that's where the expertise lies. And then it gets sent back. You do that 2 or 3 times until it's perfect. That process takes like 6 to 8 months.
Oh, true. Right. Every mold in the beginning is a little bit off, and then you have to either tweak it or it is made to be off, because what you want to do is when you have a fresh mold, you have to go make like, a couple of bad pieces first with it before it starts making consistent pieces. A lot like the idea of pancakes, you know what I mean? Like the first couple of pancakes is bad until your pan is at that perfect heat, and now you're making consistent flapjacks. It's kind of like the same idea as that, which is why factories really, really, really don't like it to switch up their assembly line. Whatever their production line is and it's already going, they just want to do that. They just want the big customers. They just want, just keep doing the same thing because it's the most efficient thing for them to do. For them to switch back and forth and stuff like that, a lot of people don't want to bother. So your order needs to be a decent size in order to do that. So it depends what your item is and depends how much you need. Of course, there's always like other methods and stuff. There's always other kinds of material, but her stuff is clearly high quality silicone. So, I believe she's worked her way up.
And because of the cost in the US, my molds at a minimum, if I'm lucky, will be $20,000 a piece. So I need $180,000, $160,000 just for the molds. And I need 8 months to get them made. And that's before I can even start production. One production line with my mat can do about 100 mats a day. We sell more than that right now. So I need multiple production lines.
Right.
I looked into starting my own factory. The cost of the equipment alone is $1 million, more than $1 million. Then I have to find somebody who has expertise. But since we don't do this type of manufacturing in the US, there aren't people here who have the expertise to run this product line.
Side note, I'm a little bit of a battery expert myself, but the thing is that kind of explains why, when you think about it, a lot of the battery companies out there are all just made by the same companies. Most batteries that you find out there, like 18650 batteries and stuff, is just made by, Panasonic Sanyo or LG or Samsung. It's just back and forth, these 3 brands all the time. There's a couple of other brands out there or whatever, but those are the 3 main makers because you can't afford to do your own, factory. So a lot of batteries out there are actually made by LG. That branch is called LG Chem, LG Chemical. So it's a branch off of like, all of LG. And, you just can't start up your own, so you're better off just, outsourcing it to them and then having that produced for you. If at any time, right, like, Korea wanted to cut off the world from like Samsung and LG and stuff, like it would hurt them as well. But like everybody else would be kind of pressed for batteries as well.
I have to pay more for insurance. I have to pay more for labor. The cost of my products will more than double. Who's going to buy them? Nobody. So for everyone thinking it's so easy to just make it in America, like I'm all ears. I am not opposed to that in any way whatsoever. Tell me how. Tell me what I'm not seeing here. Help me figure this out. because I'll do it. I will do it. I will make it in America if we can find a way that keeps me in business.
Right.
Leave a note in the comments. Okay?
You got to feel for her, right? It's not, see, nobody's against bringing production back here, but we have to be realistic about it. What do we make here? We don't have the people, we don't have the material, we don't have the infrastructure, period. And what are we going to do in the meantime? The pandemic killed so many businesses, right? So this is like putting us through like another pandemic in a way.
And I will reach out to you.
So I spoke to another small business owner. This woman's name is
This is our next
Paul.
story.
She embroiders children's clothing, and she talks to us about how these tariffs are affecting her.
I have an embroidery business here in Georgia. Well, I started it in Alabama. I opened it in 2020 when my husband came home from deployment. So we put all our savings into it. I make mostly children's clothing and memory blankets and bears and stuff like that.
And so how has your business been affected by the tariffs?
Right now, my business is on pause. I've had to pause pre-orders. I do the embroidery here, but I also get some of my stuff from China. And I do have suppliers here in the US, but they also get their materials from China. So I just don't know how I'm going to be able to afford inventory and materials and all of that. I mainly stitch children's clothing. My clothing blanks I get from China, like shirts and rompers and stuff like that. And then I stitch them here. I'm not able to get them right now because I've heard a lot of stories from some of my business owner friends. I'm sorry, I'm just getting emotional.
Sure, I understand.
They placed a lot of orders a few months ago. They're just now getting their orders and they're being hit with thousands of dollars by UPS for tariffs.
Right, because for me right now, my freight forwarder, okay, for the during the time that this first started to happen, they didn't even want to quote me a price because they have no idea what's going to happen, because I have private freight forwarding, and what's going to end up happening is that once I receive the goods, then they're going to bill me extra when they find out whatever the tariff is on the day of landing. That's what made the whole business thing such a scare. The inconsistency, the uncertainty of what's going to happen, because the tariff is going to be whatever the tariff is the day the boat lands. So how are we supposed to predict that? How are you supposed to work with that? I really regret not talking about this sooner. And the reason why I didn't is because I knew that everybody was just going to go into a frenzy of panic right now and just be super political about stuff, right? I'm talking about all of this stuff from a business standpoint, right? It's not going to be about, more left or more right. If he did something right, I would commend it. If he did something wrong, I would speak against it. So the thing is that, what we're talking about here is the whole uncertainty of how we're going to, how all the small business owners to the large business owners, like everybody's dealing, we're all in the same boat actually. But I personally thought at the time, right, this is going to be mainly posturing between both China and the United States, right? Both are very proud and they don't want to back down and they don't want to seem weak or whatever, because, the world stage, whatever that means, right? But what's most important is that like everybody's going to be missing out, right? The United States already knows that it is the world's largest consumer, and then China already knows that it is the world's largest production. So it's how do we say the coexistent it's a symbiotic relationship. You need each other, but then somebody just got to do the whole optics thing, and that's what's killing us right now. Okay, I personally think that it was just mostly posturing, and people are going to start coming down on stuff.
And now they don't know what to tell their customers.
But in the meantime, any of the people who are importing within this window, yeah, they got screwed. They got screwed really, really bad. I personally am still sitting on about 60 days worth of merchandise, more like 55 days of merchandise as of recording this right now. And I'm hoping for stuff to clear. Will I experience a bit of a hiccup? Yeah, like 2 weeks of a hiccup. I'll be a little dry on supply, but the thing is that I could make up for it by switching over from slow boat to fast boat. You don't want to switch over to air. That's way too expensive. But you definitely want to do, ultimately what I do, right? Which is large quantity, slow boat, to make stuff as cheap as possible, and then just try to have the inventory juggle one on top of the other, overlaying to the next one, so that you don't run out of supply, right? And that's what's screwing up everybody right now, because there's a lot of people who do one container every 2 months. There are people who do up to like a dozen containers every single month. So there's all sorts of business owners out there, and this is causing quite the hiccup. So the more product that you constantly have in rotation, the more you're going to get hit over the head right now during this window.
They can't tell their customers, oh, you guys have to pay more, because they've already paid. I try to keep my prices affordable. That's why I started this business, because I wanted something that's affordable to families.
Right.
I can't be charging them $70 for like a $20 product.
Right. See, that's the thing, right? It's changed the perception of value in this country because we've outsourced production for so many years. Does that make sense? See, everybody's used to the idea that, like, an embroidered baby, romper, whatever, should be about like $20. I can't charge people $70. But if it was made in this country, then it probably would go to like, 70 to like $120 or something like that. But we're all used to, all the clothing and whether you're talking about like H&M, Zara, Shein, right? To your basic stuff that you could get at like, Walmart, Sam's Club, Costco, right? Kirkland Signature stuff. Like everything is very low price. And it's not even just China, because a lot of these clothing, they also come from Pakistan and Bangladesh and stuff like that. So,
it's too much.
How
we're
easy has
used
it
to
been
that low
figure out
price.
what's going on?
It's become the standard.
Actually, it's not been easy. It's been so unpredictable. Right now it's at 125. Who's to say that it's not gonna change tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know how we're gonna set our prices or how to move forward.
Can you wait before, while this is all getting sorted out?
I don't know if I can. I don't know if my business is gonna survive. I don't even know what to do after.
How did you come to decide that this was a business you might want to do?
Okay, so when my kids were little, I like to buy embroidered clothes for them, but they were too expensive. So I started to make it like as a hobby of mine. I bought a small embroidery machine, and the next thing I know, I'm buying a couple big embroidery machines, and now I'm here. And
so,
like I said, we put all of our savings into it. We actually talked the other day. Obviously he's in the military, and he was like, we're gonna figure this out. If I have to get a second job at a fast food restaurant, he said he's gonna get a job at a fast food restaurant as a second job. While I try to figure this out.
We all need each other, right? Give me 1 second, sorry. We all need each other. And even if you wanted to go into fast food or something, right? The problem is that how much of these fast food chains get their straws and like everything also from overseas. That's exactly what the problem is. Everybody's going to be hurting all at the same time until we get this posturing out of the way, right? Until we come down to real, prices and stuff. But right now, I think the problem is that, like, the conversation is just so weird. China's got to come down and sit at a table with us, you know what I mean? Or we got to make a deal with them. They got to make a deal with the. and the rest of the people are just like, I don't care who makes a deal with who. Just hurry up and come down to, reasonable like numbers already, right? Because what every single business needs is certainty. We can't live under uncertainty because nobody knows what to do. And that's why I didn't really want to make another video just like everybody else who's been in that uncertainty thing. But I'm dropping the video now because I have more answers for you guys. So let's just keep on going with a couple of these videos. I think I got like 5 or 6 stories total, right? So I think we're on story number 3, and then 4, and then we'll see what Trump has to say, and then a little bit more follow-up stuff. You'll see what I mean.
Dollars worth of baby strollers that the U.S. imported last year came from China. For car seats, that number was 87%, according to Import Genius. So that means there are very few places to turn as tariffs climb, and that forces both retailers and consumers to start paying a higher price. So starting today, customers will see higher prices on some of the biggest brands in baby gear, from Nuna to Up-A-Baby at Three Littles, a kid shop in Washington. And its owner tells us that brands are raising prices anywhere from $20 to as high as $300 for big ticket items, all because of the tariffs.
All of the brands that we've talked to have had very specific notes in all of their emails that have said these are permanent prices, there will be no price decreases, because these prices are sticky.
Now, Mann spent last week urging customers to come in and get their gear before this first round of tariffs and price hikes. But there is a second issue, too. So with all of the uncertainty, retailers have also been racing to stock up their inventory.
Right.
And that's putting strain on the supply chain. Mann says we could soon see what she called extreme scarcity across the market.
Okay, the reason for that, right, is because if right, when there were the threats of the tariffs and stuff like that, if we went ahead and started to stock up for the next 6 months and stuff, right, for the next 6 months, for the next year or whatever, then I'm not ordering anything for a whole year. Now I'm able to keep my prices the way that they are, but then what happens afterwards, right? There's no boats coming in whatsoever, and that's going to cause scarcity, because ultimately at the end of the day, we're all of our stuff purchased, right, are all on these huge freighter boats and stuff, and there's just so many containers on it at one time. If everybody is uncertain, then you're gonna see more than 50% of business owners, anywhere from that lady who does the baby trays all the way up into Target and Walmart, and they're all just going to stop because they don't know what to do. The uncertainty is too huge, because if I go ahead and I bring them in right now, none of it can sell, especially the whole like reciprocal tariffs plus the fentanyl stuff plus at one point it went up as high as 245%, and people, you can see, are about to cry.
So we've had to price out storage space and have a warehouse so that we can buy as much inventory as we possibly can in anticipation of all of these supply chain issues coming up. So it doesn't usually look like
still
this.
raises the
it
price
is very chaotic.
because
We're having to
she had
spend
to
a lot more
get
than we would
even
typically
more
have to spend,
external
and just
storage.
cross our fingers that people want it.
Kelly, the China tariffs took effect just 6 days ago. Most goods are still on the water, but already the higher prices are in effect.
This all happened in the middle of the month. This is probably like April 15, April 14.
So now that they're at 145%, she worries about how much more might be coming.
President Trump's punishing tariffs and threats to make Canada the 51st state. Well, they put a strain on America's friendship with our neighbors to the north. And for U.S. tourism industry people and many small businesses as well, it's not just a political fight. They say it could have a devastating effect on local economies and even cost them their American dream.
Joanne Cartiglia launched her company, The Queen's Treasures, nearly 20 years ago with just $4,000 and a dream. With a small staff and husband Tony, she now sells her dolls and accessories to clients like Walmart, QVC, and Amazon from a warehouse in the village of Ticonderoga in upstate New York.
A child can put their own imagination into it, and that's what makes a toy precious,
This is hand painted.
It's all hand painted.
Could you have that hand painted here in the United States?
I wish I could, but some things are not possible.
Everything she sells is sourced from China. She's gone there 60 times to find factories that can make her products for a good price while following strict U.S. safety standards.
So when people think China is getting all the money, it's the absolute opposite. It's in salaries. I've always paid above minimum wage. It's in rent, it's in boxes, it's in shipping supply.
Right. So I show you guys this video because I want you to see what the business owners' opinions are when it comes to, China's ripping us off, is making all this money. You know what I mean? Like, that's not how people feel. People feel as if, there's a symbiotic relationship. I get the stuff cheaper over there. We sell, we make good margins, and I pay my employees good wages. You know what I mean? So nobody is making deals that they didn't want to make.
Cartiglia and her husband invested nearly all their savings in the business and say the tariffs will drive their costs so high they could be bankrupt by Christmas.
I'm 63 years old. I should be thinking of retiring. I might be working at Walmart till I'm 90 years old. This is not, I'm not just saying this for drama. This is not performative. This is a human being.
Her worries extend to the entire Adirondack region she calls home, including Lake Placid, which relies on Canadian tourism.
That is so scary, right? At 63 years old, and you think you're going to be bankrupt. All because of, you know what I mean? It was just unforeseeable. Like who could have predicted specifically it was going to go to like 240 something percent?
We know there's a lot of negative sentiments in Canada right now, emanating from global trade policy and rhetoric emanating out of Washington.
Dan Kelleher promotes tourism for the Lake Placid area, and he's concerned. Nearly 900,000 fewer travelers from Canada crossed into the U.S. last month compared to the year before. If you could talk to your Canadian tourists, what would you say to them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what we're telling our Canadian friends right now is we know that you're hurt. We know that now is not the right time to ask you to come, but when you're ready, we're excited to welcome you back.
God help us.
Joanne Cartiglia hopes her business will survive long enough to see those Canadian visitors return.
I am begging the administration to please listen to small business. I am not taking away American jobs. I am adding American jobs, and I'm providing quality product at a more reasonable price.
Okay, so here we go. Now we're going to get in today, right? You can see that I purposely picked this video because it shows the date of what is actually happening, right? So here we go.
Play hardball with them? Are you going to mention?
I don't like this reporter whatsoever. Are you going to play hardball with? You know what I mean? That's like such a loaded question. I gotta put this out in my channel. Okay, look, when we watch the news and stuff, okay, when they say, okay, Trump has put a 145% tariff, and this is going to ruin the country. Okay, the part where he said he's going to put a 145% tariff, that is the fact part, right? We could listen to that. It's going to ruin the country. Like, we don't know if that's posturing. That's going to be over in 2 or 3 days. It's not going to ruin the country. It'll put us a hiccup or something like that. Like, those are things that need to play out, right? And I don't like it when they interject that kind of opinion into it, just like the flip side. Trump's doing this tariffs is going to make our country wonderful. Like, no, you don't know that either. Okay. Nobody knows what's going on. That's why people are crying. People are worried. People don't know what their next move is because of the uncertainty. That part is a fact, that everybody is uncertain what's going to happen next. And also at the same time, we know Trump's, track record, right? That he likes to make people not able to guess his next move. That's the way he likes to deal with other people, right? That's where kind of sort of his power comes from when he deals with other leaders. They don't know what his next move is. They might think he's crazy. They might think he's, erratic or whatever. And he tries to use that to his advantage. That part is absolutely true. So, we'll see what happens. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to play the cards well. It might, he might come out on top and he might not come out on top. Either way, what I don't like is when people say like, this is definitely going to be bad or this is definitely going to be great, when the truth is neither side really actually knows. But I just want you to hear what he specifically has to say about this, because this is a little bit of a backpedal, in my opinion.
Well, I'm not going to say, no, I'm not going to mention COVID. I'm not going to say, I'm going to play hardball with China. I'm going to play hardball with you, President Xi. No. We're going to be very nice. They're going to be very nice. And we'll see what happens. But ultimately, they have to make a deal.
Okay, see, ultimately they have to make a deal. He's still playing on that one, right? But now he's added that we're going to play very nice. Okay, and China doesn't like how you did this because you in China's eyes you threw the first punch because you did the first tariff hike, right? But in the United States' eyes, it's like, look, we put that out first just to see how you would react, and because you reacted that way, now we are not friends. You know what I mean? And then China is like, friends don't throw the first punch. So this is so difficult to go back and forth on the debate. The rest of us are stuck in the middle. Like, could you guys just sort it out already so that the rest of us could go back to business as usual?
Because otherwise, they're not going to be able to deal in the United States. And we want them involved, but they have to, and other countries have to make a deal.
Isn't that the actual truth? We want them involved. They want to be involved, but you guys just can't kiss and make up for some reason.
And if they don't make a deal, we'll set the deal, because
right. So 3 weeks ago, right? Trump's like, they have to call us, they have to make a deal with us or whatever. And now what did he just say? If they're not going to make the deal, then we're going to make the deal.
We're the ones that set the deal. Scott and Howard and myself and others, we're going to be setting the deal, and it'll be a fair deal for everybody, and it'll be, I think it's a process that's going to go pretty quickly. 145% is very high, and it won't be that high. It's not going to be that high. It got up to that. We were talking about fentanyl, where, various elements built it up to 145. No, it won't be anywhere near that high.
I really wish I regret that I didn't drop the video earlier, because at home I'm constantly saying they've been. I think I said it to a couple of people in the comments who asked me about this. I'm like, I think it's just posturing. So for you guys who remember, I responded with that. Then yeah, I could say I called it, right. But I really wish I dropped the video earlier so that I'm 100% on record saying that, like, this is mainly going to be posturing, right? And the bad part is that anybody caught in this window is going to pay out the nose, okay? Luckily, they caught me like right in the middle of a in between orders and stuff like that, right? Well, I should say not in between orders. So I'm just going to be experiencing a smaller hiccup. To let you guys know exactly what's happening, when you import stuff, it goes by gross weight, okay? And what does that mean, right? Long story short, gross weight means it's gross. That's what it is, because it makes me so mad. Gross weight basically means a certain weight or a certain dimension, and they will charge you by whichever one prevails. Does that make sense? If it's heavier than what its size is, then we're going to charge you by weight. If it's larger than what the weight is, then we're going to charge you by the dimensions. So whichever way, you're paying the highest, right? So you basically really want an item just that's like right in between, you know what I mean? Like, don't even worry about it, because you're just going to be billed the highest way possible. So basically, it goes by gross weight kilo. This is a very difficult calculation. I'll do a whole video on it maybe some other time. It's really not that important, because if you're dealing with a sourcing agent, if you're dealing directly with a freight forwarder or whatever, they're just going to end up quoting you a price, okay? And whatever the price is, that's whatever the price is. The best that you can negotiate with these prices is, like, if you have more economic routes, right? Like by fast boat, by slow boat, by even slower boat, like stuff like that. That's how you get your prices down. So basically what they were charging me pre all of this nonsense was $1.86 per kilo, okay? And now they are charging me $2.60 per kilo, okay? So there's quite a significant hike. So if I had to do the math on that, basically I have a new minimum order quantity item that I brought in that was just like 200 units, okay? Because this is just for the sake of simple math. So on those 200 units, had I paid my regular rate of 1.86, I would have been paying something like 700 and change in order to bring those 200 units in. But now they hiked me up to the 2.6. now I'm paying something like 1050, like a little over, like over $1,000 to bring in that same 200 units. So I'm paying $300 more, you know? So is it bad? It's okay, you know? If I do the math of like the difference in the price and stuff, I'm paying an extra $1.55 in order to bring something in. But let's say we were selling it on eBay, and everything that you sell on eBay, the more you sell, the higher the price you sell, the higher they charge you, right? So I can't just mark it up $1.55 on you guys when I sell it back to you. I have to mark it up, you know, accordingly. So if I had to go ahead and multiply it by like, I don't know, like 18% or something like that, you're talking about like jacking it up 30 cents to $1.85. So if I sold it at $70 a piece, I would probably sell it at, you know, $72 a piece right now. That's pretty much what's happening to me, because I think the adjustment has already happened, even though they haven't fully announced it just yet, because, you know, the rates and whatever is already available to the freight forwarder. So they would actually know a little bit better of what the current rates actually are. But the point is, with all the freak out and stuff, I want you you guys to see, as of April 22nd, 2025, Trump has already announced that, like, you know, it's not going to be 145. I went up to 140, you know what I mean? But actually, it's not going to be 145%.
And what level do you think it'll come down to if you have It'll come down substantially, but it won't
substantially
be zero.
Right.
It used to be.
Right. So the thing is this, right? If you guys remember back in 2016, what he did was actually 25%. So whatever the duty was, right? I remember the category that I was in, I paid 2% duty, right? But thanks to the Trump tax, I have to pay 25 on top of that. So I was doing 27%. It's not a problem. The percentages is really not that big of a problem when it's within reasonable percentage. You know why? Because I'm paying it, you're paying it, he's paying it, everybody, all my competitors are paying it. I'll tell you what's really killing my business the past couple of years during the Biden administration is something called the de minimis tax. That messed us up big time. Guys like me got messed up big time on that one, right? And I'll tell you the way around it. Okay, so the de minimis tax at the time, I think it started off at 1,000 and then it got lowered to like 800 or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but I know it's 800 right now, right? So the de minimis tax is going to end this May 2nd. So anything that you're getting right now, your Temu, your like whatever, right? It got to be here before May 2nd, or the de minimis will kick your butt. Okay. What ended up happening is that factories can go ahead and then ship anything, if it's one item or whatever, that is under $800 value to the United States without any custom duties or whatever, right? So EMS, which is the mailing system over in China, set up the packet so that it's very easy for, you know, companies to ship that directly over. So, you know, Shein, Temu, AliExpress, DHgate, all these places blew up immediately, as well as all of these Chinese companies going directly on eBay, as well as Amazon. And that squeezed out a couple of my items. Okay. That I don't want to say that upset me very, very much at that time during the Biden administration. And now it's started to end. So the happiest thing I am about Trump actually is for him to end the de minimis tax, because as an importer developer, right, I can compete with other importers and developers. Okay. I'm very good at defeating other people on that. What I can't do is beat up my own supplier of where I get it from. So now my own factory is like, you know, setting up shop right next to me, like, hey, how's it going? Well, what are you doing here? You know, I can't beat up his prices. So what ends up happening is what? I have to be very, very smart with the products that I develop, right? I have to have exclusivity on my products in order to make sure that, like, you know, if when China tries to go cheaper or something like that, it doesn't affect me the same. So immediately I had to conjure up a whole bunch of brand new items and stuff that is very exclusive, you know, that only I have, right? That hopefully, you know, China has not caught on to copy or anything like that, to stay afloat during the de minimis years. That's how I got through it. But as far as all the white labeled products, oh, that got stomped. That got stomped right away because they're the people who I get it from, So luckily, I only do about like something like 12% on white labeling, but that still made me really mad. You know what I mean? Most of my stuff is all custom label things, my creation, my design, my innovations, and whatever. It's private only to me, right? And my factory would rather not lose me as a client than to backdoor it to somebody else, right? Or to do it themselves or whatever, because I've dealt with them for so long. And if it suddenly comes onto the market or whatever, then it's like, who's doing this? It had to have been them. The issue is that whatever the item that is that I created, unless you're very vigilant watching me, watching my sales, watching my feedbacks, watching, and you're watching all of my accounts on all of my platforms, right? Walmart, my own stuff, and at eBay, Amazon. Like, you have to be watching all of these things. Then you could be like, okay, this guy's doing a lot of sales, right? So I'm going to copy his item. Other than that, when people are always paranoid about, yeah, but then if you're doing very well, then people are going to copy your item. Yeah, but the thing is that, do you know how well you have to be doing to show up on somebody's radar? By then, you've most likely already made your money if you are doing that well to the point where you are showing up on somebody's radar. Okay. All right. Let me stop talking so that we could get through this video and finish up on what Trump has to say.
Zero. We were just destroyed. China was taking us for a ride, and just not going to happen.
See, I don't like that.
It's not going to happen. We're going to be very good to China, have a great relationship.
If you're talking about any recent deals between the United States and China, right? I could see that China's taking us for a ride. But if you're talking about back then, when China was still a third world country willing to be your cheap production, it was basically volunteer work at the time. There's no way you're being taken a ride by them, right? If anything, how do you get around somebody producing something for you and you didn't teach them how to make it, right? How can you ask me to make your secret surprise chocolate chip cookies and you just never gave me the recipe? That makes no sense, right?
Relationship with President Xi, but they would make billions and billions and billions of dollars a year. And
the United States runs on trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, right? We were like 36 trillion in debt and barely even bat an eyelash at that, right? So, for a country so much bigger, right, with a population of 1.6 billion at the time, 1.4 billion now, they're not allowed to make billions of dollars. They have a billion people and they're not allowed to make billions of dollars, but we have 300 million people here and we make trillions of dollars, but that's not fair. I just found this commentary really funny though, for them to say they're making billions and billions of dollars. Yeah, well, how much does the United States bring in, right? Trillions. So what are you talking about?
They would build their military out of the United States and what they made, so that won't happen. But they're going to do very well, and I think they're going to be happy, and I think we're going to live together very happily and ideally work together. So I think it's going to work out very well. But no, it's at 145%. There will not be anywhere near that number.
Right. So ultimately, guys, this dragged on for too long. Okay. Personally, I thought it was going to go on for 3 days, up maximum 2 weeks. This has gone on for 3 weeks and close to a month now. Okay. So this has gone on for way too long. But I always knew in the back of my mind this was just going to be mostly posturing and stuff. This is just what politics is and the game is played. Full disclosure, I neither love Trump nor hate Trump. Okay, you just have to be realistic of what's happening, and do your best to try to read between the lines without too much influence from the rest of the media who wants you to think one way or another. Because ultimately, what's best for our businesses is what's best for our families, and that's what we really care about, right?
The shortages are coming. So far, Trump's tariffs have...
Okay, I like Philip DeFranco because he is, even though he's very left-leaning, okay, I want to say that he presents stuff with he's one of the presenters with the minimum amount of bias with what he say. He has a very minimum amount of opinion of what he says. He's more of a fact presenter, even though he is openly on the left.
Been a story about the markets, but the real world effects, they're about to arrive and they could be deadly. With container bookings down over 60%, according.
This is what I mean, right? This is what these frigates look like, right? Look how many shipping containers on all this thing. And if it's down 60%, look how much stuff is going to be missing. Just imagine your home with like 50-60% of the items in your home missing. Clearly you got robbed, right? That's what it's going to look like.
To the Flexport CEO, right? And with that, he said that if the tariffs aren't lifted, we'll see a $2 trillion hit to economic activity, the failure of tens of thousands of American
Right, we need each other.
The laying off of millions of employees. And this is the Port of LA is seeing a rapid decrease in activity. Next week, they'll see 10% less ships than last year at this time. And then the week of May 4th, 35% less ships. Also, trucking out of the port.
Guys, quickly look up the stuff that's been happening in Las Vegas, the tourism in Disney, Vegas, like all the tourist places in the United States, right? People are getting laid off because that's the first thing that you cut on spending, right? Vacationing, splurging and stuff like that. So scary things is about to happen. You know what I mean? Especially. I remember there was another report where specifically the CEOs of Target, Walmart, and Home Depot went to go visit Trump to let him know that we could be experiencing shortages in between. I forgot what they said, like in 2 months or something like that. We're going to be experiencing shortages. During COVID, right? The one thing that I saw coming from a mile away is that all that COVID stuff hit Hawaii first. You know what I mean? And that already is a little bit alarming, right? But Hawaii is actually very far away from the United States if you pull up the globe. But after Hawaii, it hit California, right? And then, the Diamond Princess with that all the sick people on that cruise ship and stuff. So you could already see like it's going to start pouring over. And then we had like all the viral videos of two Karens fighting over toilet paper and stuff. And a lot of wild things started to happen during like these shortages or whatnot, right? So I would say very much pay attention to California first, right? Things like this that come over from the eastern side of the world will hit the western side of the United States first. So once you see any reports or whatever of things happening in California, you better start preparing on your side. You know what I mean, of the country. Luckily, the good thing is that like 70% of the United States live on the eastern seaboard, right? So most of you guys are in Florida, New York, Tennessee, just Texas, everything over to the right side of the map. So that's my best advice to you guys, right? Don't freak out until you see something happen to California first. And if you are in California, then I'm sorry, I don't know what's the buffer before that, because I don't think it's gonna happen to Hawaii first. But if it does, then I guess if you're in California, keep an eye on Hawaii. And if you're in Hawaii, I'm so sorry, I really don't know what else to say. Everybody has to watch that chain reaction, but that's my best advice.
It's already down 23%, and some analysts expect it to fall by 50%. And it's believed that the longer that Trump keeps the tariffs in place, the worse this is going to be, because the tariffs on China are so high that they've been called an effective embargo. And so if nothing changes, starting around May 10th, a lot of U.S. ports will likely become pretty quiet and shortages will begin, because that is when the ships that would have otherwise left.
I wonder if that clip of the shortage was from the pandemic.
China on April 10th would have arrived in LA. Right, normal times it takes 3 weeks for ships to go from China to LA and 40 to New York by sea. So in late May.
This is absolutely true for you guys who are interested in importing and stuff like that. This is why I was originally a New Yorker, right? And whenever we import stuff or whatever, it took anywhere between 45 to 50 days at the time, because everything that comes over from China, India, Bangladesh, or whatever, right? Everything that comes over from the Pacific Ocean has to swing down Mexico, right? And then go through the Panama Canal, come up through the Gulf of, you know what I mean? And then around Florida, and then up the eastern seaboard, okay? So being in New York, I used to get all my stuff from the port in Newark, right? This is exactly what explains that most people live in coastal cities, right? All the population is there. Everybody's in California, Washington, and then all along the eastern seaboard. And then there's, far less people everywhere in between, right? And then the rest of the population gathers in Texas. That's it. Like, you know. Oh, and you'll have some, you know, in Chicago, like Illinois area, because of the Great Lakes. That is also a port too. So basically, everywhere there is a major port is where pretty much everybody lives when you look at the map. So when you think about being an importer and the best places that you could be and stuff, right? Seriously, just look at a map, find somewhere with a major port, and then, you know, make a decision. You know what I mean? But for me, coming out to the West, right? You know, my choices is basically going to be between Los Angeles or Long Beach to get most of my stuff. And he's absolutely right. Things that I order, okay, take something like 22 days, 28 days if it's delayed. But once you need it to come over to New York, anywhere along the Eastern Seaboard, you're talking about roughly 40 days in order to do that. So when that happens with your business, now you need to buffer more cash flow, right? Because things take longer to deliver. So now you need an extra month. So I could go ahead and stockpile anywhere between like, 3 months supply, 4 months supply, and be very, very comfortable like that. While in New York, I probably have to face 5 month to 6 month supply to make sure that there's no shortages whatsoever.
Hey, New York will receive the last pre-Liberation Day shipment, and then their ports will fall quiet for at least 40 days, at least from China. And, you know, every day these tariffs stay in place, the longer it takes to fix the shortages. And in fact, you have some analysts saying that even if Trump lifts the tariffs tomorrow, you're still going to have shortages, and it could also create a bullwhip effect where the tariffs get lifted and there aren't enough ships to meet demand. But then also, you know, a surge of all these ships, it could cause the ports to get clogged up too, resulting in even less ships doing shipping. And
ain't that the sad truth, right? Because the moment everything is lifted and we have clarity, and then Trump has decided, okay, 35% or 25%, back to the same 2016 rate that he had before, what's going to happen? Everybody's like, okay, now we can move forward. And then everybody's ordering at the same time. It's going to cause congestion in the Pacific. I remember during the last, I think the first 2 years of the Biden presidency, right? We had serious congestion. We had serious congestion over at the Long Beach port. Okay, and that drove me insane because my stuff was stuck there for like, I think over about 6 weeks. 6 weeks I couldn't get my stuff. That drove me insane, and I had like really high end stuff in that container. That messed me up so bad. I was real angry at that.
This causing shortages and shortages raising prices. So in short, I guess in a way it could look a lot like 2020, which, hey, same president too. But for now, follow to stay in the loop.
All right, guys. So I hope you are satisfied with my coverage of exactly what happened with the tariffs, the history behind it, the rabbit hole dives of what the luxury brands are like. You know what I mean? I try to cover as many things as possible. I know that was like a fire hose of information, but hopefully they answered a lot of your questions and stuff. And if you guys have more questions, then go ahead and leave a comment below or leave me an email. You could go directly to, you know, the Pegasus Lounge homepage and then click on the about, and then you can find my email over there. Okay. Anyways, guys, that is the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like. And if you learned something, please consider subscribing. As always, I'll see you guys in the next. Take care.